terrorism today is much bigger than terrorism on 9/11. We have over 18,000 known foreign terrorists on U.S. soil. They're collecting money, they're doing influence, media operations, they're doing surveillance. People need to know the truth.
Sarah Adams, former CIA targeting officer and global threat advisor, explains how the U.S. may be more vulnerable to a terrorist threat than ever before.
In 9/11, Al-Qaeda was 5,000 members. Now, worldwide, they have over 200,000. There are sleeper cells in the United States. The public thinks terrorists haven't tried to attack us. Yes, they have. We stop them every single time.
Okay, I'm officially afraid.
It makes me really nervous that awareness is going away. More lax in security, more lax in counterintelligence.
Are we becoming more vulnerable?
You can't live based on a fear, but knowing the threats out there, you can prepare around them. You want to come to my country, you want to be in my neighborhood, bring it on. It could be a bad day for you.
Hi, I'm Mayim Bialik.
And I'm Jonathan Cohen.
And welcome to our breakdown. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into national intelligence gathering, terrorism, Iran's role in global politics, and the future of global conflict.
We're also exploring the forces shaping the world that many of us never see.
Our guest today is Sarah Adams. She's the host of The Watch Floor, and she's a former CIA targeting officer and global threat advisor. She served in the CIA's Counterterrorism Center, the Near East Division, and the Iran Operations Division, and she advised the U.S. House of Representatives on national security matters and later led the Department of Defense research and development efforts focused on intelligence modernization and operational capability development. She lived in Libya for many years and wrote Benghazi, Know Thy Enemy, a cold case investigation. Sarah's going to talk about the current threats that the United States is facing, what we've done wrong, how we are vulnerable, and how we can turn that around.
We're going to talk about how the shoe bomb is making a comeback, how terrorists have developed an invisible bomb, and that the next 9/11 is already being planned.
This isn't a conversation just about terrorism, though. It's about how we can be manipulated, the role of propaganda, psychological conditioning, intelligence operations. What are the narratives in the media that influence the way we see our role in the world, and whether global chaos is being engineered by forces that most of us don't even know are there. It's a pleasure to welcome to the breakdown, Sarah Adams. Break it down.
Thanks for having me.
Let's just start here. Sarah, how much fun are you at cocktail parties? I'm assuming everyone wants to ask you about the things that you're an expert in.
Yes, I get a lot of questions, but they're always like crazy ones. And you're like, this is something that should just stayed in your head.
Go on. I'd like to hear those.
What do people ask you? Like, generally speaking, what do people kind of bring up when they learn that you are Sarah Adams?
They'll do these weird things like, in my town, there was like a CIA abduction in the 1960s. Do you know about it? And it's like, or they'll be like, we had a secret CIA base in our town. And so it's always these strange, I guess, town lores or something. So I think it's really funny.
Can you explain for people what it is that you are an expert in? You know, obviously you're an analyst, you're an advisor, you held a very high and very, very significant, position in our government at an incredibly important time in our history. Who are you and what do you do?
I feel like I'm not an expert in anything. I'm just really good at common sense. But so for years I worked, of course, terrorism. I worked against Iran. So I've done a mix of like geopolitics. I've done a lot of humanitarian work, but I'm just kind of one of those people. I grew up in the Midwest. I'll talk to anyone. I'm really good at going out and getting information from any human on earth because I just think we're all human to human. So I'm mostly known for like going out and collecting information and then sharing it with the public because I feel like we don't do a lot where we pass down to the public what's going on.
I mean, I'm just struck by, like, if I were to see you in the supermarket, I'd be like, that's a lady. I would not necessarily think this is someone who's operating at the highest levels, of government, of terrorism, of intelligence. Is that part of the way you get information? Is there just sort of a familiarity that you're able to achieve? Because with all due respect, if I saw you working at, at the local store, I'd be like, that's a nice lady. That's Sarah, right? I wouldn't say like, this seems like a CIA intelligence analyst is working at my local store.
Who's defending America against threats and finding information about adversaries who may want to harm us.
That's the interesting thing. People assume you're going to look a certain way, I guess, because they've seen the movies, even though there aren't tons of women in the spy movies. But they don't get that you're just like everybody else. And usually, most agency people I met, especially women, are actually from small towns. They grew up just like me. They were friends with everyone. They grew up in neighborhoods where they didn't lock their doors. It's a very, very interesting thing. We didn't grow up in environments where we were fearful in any way. So I think we also approach things differently. We're more comfortable reaching out to people. Even when we did our investigation into Libya, I put a list together of I'm going to reach out to these Libyans and just ask them some questions. I'm going to be straightforward, right? I'm Sarah Adams, former CIA. My friends died here. Every single person I reached out to was at least helpful, even if they didn't know my answer. They said, oh, I can find someone that can for you. And so it's a really interesting thing. People are good. People want to be helpful. And I think that's anywhere in the world. I think we just sometimes forget that because we see only the press version of the world. We don't see real life.
What were the skills that you had as a young person that you now see made you a good candidate for the kind of work that you do in terms of gathering information? Also, I think you're being humble. It's not just common sense. It's being able to connect a variety of different pieces of information that in many cases are indicating threat. What was it about Sarah, right, that made you a good candidate for the kind of position you ended up having?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best trait, and I think CIA looks for this a lot, is if you're scrappy. Because the thing is, when you're in the CIA, you fail all the time. First off, you're overseas and it's chaos. No one shows up on time. People tell you yes when it's no because they don't want to give you a no. Nothing goes right. So you can't get frustrated when it all falls apart because you got to start over and do it again and keep moving through till you get to where you need to be. So that's a really big thing. Another thing, like you said, is the ability to connect things and understand how they connect, but also don't just connect things because, oh, there's a lot of people like everyone called this phone number. Yes, everyone calls that phone number in my town because it's the one pizza joint, right? The pizza guy isn't going to link us to the whole network. So it is a little bit of you have to have common sense, but there are people who always want to find an answer quickly, and you have to be patient. You have to make those mistakes. You have to know people are lying to you and just be understanding of that and then go with the flow as it happens.
I'm just making a list of the qualities that I'm supposed to have. Patience. That's not for me. No, he's shaking his head.
Also, when things go wrong, she
No.
does not like that.
I
If
burn
someone-
burn it all to the ground. Patience, scrappy, ability to kind of like roll with the punches. These are good qualities. And being friendly, which I am not from the Midwest. My people are from New York. You're not friendly to anyone.
Right.
You just failed your CIA entrance exam.
I think I'm more likely to be the person that Sarah's investigating than the person doing the investigating.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. New Yorkers? No way.
Talk to us a little bit about the bullshit detector that you have to have, because I would assume while people are friendly, there are also people who are lying to you all the time. And, you say common sense, but I think there's a sixth sense that's happening where you see something or you sense something that others don't, which makes you want to get to that truth.
Yeah, the easiest is if you spend a lot of time with someone, because then you can set a baseline and you'll notice when things go off the baseline. That's the easiest. Of course, you don't always have that luxury. So if you don't spend a lot of time with a person, in my opinion, you can't just determine it on your own. You have to collect other information. So, for example, I know a lot of different Al-Qaeda deception campaigns. So there are certain things when people say something to me, I'm like, oh, I know this is the language they teach the recruits. I know this is how they say things. I know this is how they try to sell them. So you kind of have to have a little bit of both, as much time on target as possible, and then as much information of how the enemy wants to deceive you, so you have a little bit of a light bulb go off when it happens.
Talk to us about some of those deception campaigns. What do you look out for?
Yeah, I mean, one of the simplest ones is just downplaying of if someone's important or not. And this was actually very famously done in the Zero Dark 30 movie. So, we're in Hollywood world. But I don't know if you remember when Maya was looking for Osama bin Laden, she was questioning detainees. I fast forward through that beginning, but she's
I didn't
questioning
like that
detainees.
part.
I
Yeah.
don't like it either. And she notices multiple detainees call this courier very important and saying he's always with bin Laden. And one guy says, "Oh, he's nobody. Why are you even asking about that guy?" And she said, "That's weird, because three people said he was important and one people said he's a nobody," right? So that's really interesting when they downplay someone. Another thing they like to do is they like to just tell you people are dead. I know this is crazy, but they'll report people dead all the time. So the US government has all these terrorists dead that never died.
Wait, wait,
So
wait.
you have to put in
Wait, they say people are dead, but they're not, or they think that they're dead, but they're not.
they say they're dead, and then they tell you, "Oh, he was killed in a US strike." So then the Americans are like, "Whoa, whoa, we got that guy. Who knew?" And then they pat themselves on the back. People get promoted and they move on, and he's perfectly alive. That's another huge problem. And then just one of the simplest things, as you can imagine, is you get paid to give information. So there's a lot of information peddlers. They might be working for multiple governments. They just tell you what you want to hear. It's really funny. I used to work the number two of the Taliban, and there was a guy in Afghanistan that said he met with him. I said, "This guy knows nothing about him." So I captured this number two and I send the photo over, and he can't ID the photo of a guy he meets monthly. And so I said, "I told you he's never had any info. It's crap info." And they're like, "Well, we get such good ratings on all of his reports. We're keeping him." So they didn't even fire him. So it's just tons of crap info. So you have to also be able to go through all this noise, and really determine what's quality information.
Did you just say you captured him?
Yeah, the number two. I wish I could capture the asset though, because he's worse. Because if you have someone lying to you for years, that destroys your collection.
Sarah, you're talking so casually. It's kind of like I baked a cheesecake. I captured the number two.
How did you capture him?
So this is really funny, and this is why just mistakes happen in life. We all make a mistake. So he was the best. He was like the movies. In the movies, they'll like stay on the phone for like 9 seconds and then hang up. He literally did that all the time. So you could never find him. Well, he went to another city for a trip, and his son stole his cell phone and turned it on. A
No.
teenager. A teenager. So the teenager takes the phone and rides with it for 2 days, and then they come back home with it, and we captured it. So it was really, really funny, right? Luckily, we had done all the work, so we were ready for it to happen. But that was pure luck that a kid did that to his father, and that actually happened to a very senior leader in Hezbollah. His kid put on, I think it was Facebook, "Hey, we're going to this location," and then they had looked for his father for like 15 or 20 years. So it is sometimes the family that messes it up for these senior terrorists.
That kid's getting grounded hard.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, I met the terrorist and then we brought it up and he laughed about it. So he actually wasn't mad at his son. So I guess that's a good thing. They're like us in some ways.
How are you not mad at your kid for getting you caught by the US government after
You
you've been
know,
evading capture for years?
I don't think you kids think of that. So.
Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by Shopify.
You've heard it all before. Now's the best time to start your business, but summertime can feel like the most overwhelming time of all, and we totally get it. Nothing felt more overwhelming than getting our podcast off the ground, but it turned out to be the best decision, and the next best decision we made was using Shopify for our merch. Their expertise, easy-to-use platform, and helpful tools made the process simple and stress-free. Making that leap is possible when you have a partner like Shopify on your side to help. Shopify will simplify your checkout process so more customers finish their purchase. Or if they need more time, when they come back, their details are already saved. One tap and they're done. Because Shopify handles the setup and checkout, you've got more time to focus on growing your business and the tools to do it. You don't want to be spending time fixing mistakes. You want to be spending your time in the sun, enjoying these precious summer moments with the people that you love. Shopify powers millions of businesses worldwide, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to small businesses just getting started to our podcast. With Shopify, nothing stands between your idea and a real business. So go make it one. If you're ready to stop putting off your business and start hearing, then you're ready for Shopify. Start your free trial at shopify.com/breakdown today. You heard that right. Start your free trial today at shopify.com/breakdown.
That's shopify.com/breakdown. Mayim Bialik's Breakdown is supported by OneSkin.
Whether you try every new skincare product or you've been using the same things for years, at some point, your skin's not just going to be able to keep up the way that it used to. And that's what OneSkin changed for me. It didn't just make my existing routine better, it actually works differently than anything else that I've tried. As we age, skin cells stop functioning the way they should, causing fine lines and dullness that creeps in over time. And OneSkin's OS1 peptide was specifically engineered to address those visible signs of aging. With summer here, that matters even more. Up to 80% of visible skin aging starts with sun exposure, but OneSkin's new limited edition summer bundles have you covered. It's their skincare and SPF essentials paired together. So the OS1 peptide helps to reverse the visible effects of UV aging and uses SPF protection to prevent new damage. It's a complete system to summerproof your skin, so make sure to check these out before they're gone. My favorite thing is that they're rooted in rigorous science and research. With OneSkin's Face SPF, it's got the same science-backed skincare benefits from the OS1 peptide while also giving you mineral SPF protection from UV exposure. Reverse aging while having lots of summer fun. You really don't need a complicated routine to get healthier, younger-looking skin. Born from over a decade of longevity research, OneSkin is helping you unlock your healthiest skin now and as you age. For a limited time, try OneSkin with 15% off using code BREAK at oneskin.co/break. That's 15% off oneskin.co with the code BREAK. After you purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support our show. Tell them we sent you. The casualness, with which you speak about your job, right? I'm trying to picture you, meeting with these high-level terrorists. And, I've seen a lot of these movies kind of depicting that. And now I'm only going to picture you, when I see those movies. But I wonder if you could talk a little bit, we come from a very different culture, right, than a lot of the, countries that you're dealing with, meaning, the West is different and the Middle East has its own, culture. And then each country has its own kind of, culture as well. What is it like for you, as a Western, liberated, secular, right, woman? What is that interface like? What does kind of confidence building look like? What does trust building look like? And are there cases where people do not take you seriously?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. First off, they tell you it's going to happen one way, and then sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. So I was first told when you get in front of the detainee, because they're so extreme, they're not going to look at you, they're not going to answer your questions, they're going to treat you like you're invisible. And that happened the first time and never again. So every other one engaged with me, they were curious, they were interested. And a lot of it is, as you can imagine, they have never met a Western woman. They have never looked one in the eye. They've never seen one laugh at them. It's a very interesting thing to watch. Another thing is when you're in this situation, it's already an uncomfortable situation because you're in a position of power, right? They're on the other side. They're in detention. So you always have to be careful in these discussions. Even if you say, oh, I'm building rapport. Are you? I have a person who's influenced his entire life in front of me. He's convinced people to blow themselves up. I'm not sitting across from you doing some mind magic. So you have to be honest too about your capabilities and who's in front of you. And then it depends on who it is. So if you have someone in this case, he was very intelligent. So he wanted to know you knew about him. He wanted to know you're paying attention. He wanted respect. Not everybody is that way, but it depends on who's in front of you, how you interact with them. It's kind of like the know your audience. I've been in front of terrorists who weren't smart at all. They couldn't even identify their own photograph. So it is this huge spread when you're talking to them.
I'd like to talk for a second about the bounty because you've described your role, but I don't think people may understand that, you're really putting yourself in danger. You're known in this world. Can you talk a little bit about that bounty and describe it to people?
Yeah, so the good thing is when I was in the CIA and I met with terrorists, I just used a fake name. So they knew me as this American. I literally went by the name Becky. I just picked it out of the sky. I mean, Becky with the good hair now, but she didn't exist then. So it didn't matter to me, right? I was never going to run into these people again or interact with them again. And then now I'm out of the CIA. All the terrorists I captured were released. And now I'm a public figure when I was always a private figure. So they all know me. The number two I talked about, he actually has my book. So it's really funny now because they know who I am, and some have beefs with me and some don't. But yeah, I have this strange bounty on my head. I have a couple of things. I have assassination plot I'm way more concerned about. But there is this funny bounty in Iraq by like Hezbollah in Iraq. It's the group the guy was just picked up from. They picked up that terrorist in Turkey and they brought him to the United States and he was plotting against Ivanka. So it's the same terrorist group. So it started as something dinky. It was like $15,000, but you can come live in Iraq, and then it's been going up. So the last time, like a few months ago, was like 350,000 US dollars. So it's like this, it's like a lotto pot or something. So it's very funny.
It's not funny, Sarah. It's not funny at all.
I just don't think it's a great deal. You get 350,000, you got to live in Iraq. Like, I don't know who's jumping on that. So, but I have a lot more senior people who are focused on me, and they're my concern.
Let's cover those for a minute. You mentioned while describing the bounty that there's an assassination plot. We're taking this very seriously. Mayim would never sleep again, knowing that someone tweeted something mean about her, let alone has a bounty.
To say a terrorist has a beef with you, like that feels like a little bit of an understatement.
Again, we're joking, but these are people who have made their life mission the destruction of the West, encouraging people to blow themselves up. Can you describe a little bit about what this assassination plot is? How did it come to be? And what do you know about it?
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple. So the terrorists are concerned people are going to get in their way. That's just the best way to put it, right? They're putting out misinformation. They have all these future plots, and some people are finding about the plots and talking about them. And I'm just one of those. So in Al-Qaeda, long story short, they have a military commission. And all this group does is they plan all the operations for the group, okay, in the whole world. So that's where my plot is coming out of. And so it's to assassinate me, here at my home. So we have seen terrorist surveillance here and that type of stuff. So it's pretty far along. But again, it's just to take someone out of the equation who they think could get in the way of their operational plans, because that's what they do. They try to threaten and harm people. So way back in the day when I was in Libya, every day there was an assassination. And it almost became where you stopped paying attention. But if you sat down and looked at who was assassinated, it was a police officer, a judge, a woman activist. They started at that time getting kind of like these peace activists, and they started being what was now would be influencers, and they're taking them out. So if you watch systematically who they're taking out, it was anybody who could get in the way of them kind of taking control, in that region. And unfortunately, that's the way they do it. They take out, their enemy as well. You don't have to be the president of the United States.
What type of surveillance did you witness on your home that, tipped you off to the fact that this was happening?
Yeah, well, it was really funny. I mean, not funny. I know you don't think it's funny. It was a cold day. We're never cold here, so I was all bundled up, and then I felt this truck coming very, very slow. The funny part is when I looked at them and they looked at me, I was like, "Holy crap!" Those are Libyans. And they were like, "Holy crap, that's Sarah Adams. She looks crazy." So the funny part is they were surveilling my home, but they rounded the corner. And so I wasn't actually at my home. And we each saw each other, and we were both shocked that we saw each other because we didn't expect to see each other. So it was one of those things that it was just this, they weren't ready. So that was good for me. But yeah, I didn't look, I had a hoodie on, big glasses. I had like three tops on. So yeah, it was just this weird situation. So it was kind of good. I guess I was in like a costume or disguise in some way, but it was like, oh my God, this is real. Because I had been told it was happening, and I had been given updates of things they knew about my house and my dog. So I knew they were doing it, but this was the first day I saw one of them and looked them in the eye.
I think we can add to the list of characteristics that are necessary to be someone like Sarah Adams. You know, I would pee myself in the street. Like that would send me into a nervous system overdrive.
She gets scared sometimes when she sees me in the hallway
And I know you're in
unexpectedly.
the house. Right.
Hey, I'm that way.
Are there skills that you have been taught to regulate surrounding threat and danger? Because like I get scared if a truck passes by and no one's trying to kill me. Like what goes on when you contemplate the threat that you directly are living under?
Yeah, so I have a high tolerance. So it wasn't actually exactly taught, it was learned because, I lived in Pakistan, Libya. I've lived in environments where this was happening all the time. Like when I was in Pakistan, like anytime I was in a checkpoint, I was like, oh, this could be the day it blows up. So I got used to kind of like being in that environment to where it's like you have a different perception of the threat or fear, and then you learn different ways to mitigate it, because at the end of the day they're after us, but I'm also after them. I mean, this is a cat and mouse game. I'm not here fearful as like the victim, like in a defensive posture. It's like, bring it on. You want to come to my country? You want to come to my town? You want to be in my neighborhood? Good luck. You step on my grass, it's going to be a bad day for you. That's the way I look at
Okay, I'm officially afraid of Sarah.
it. A lot of people are.
You should channel that energy when you see me in the hallway. You're like, this is my hallway.
That's a really interesting perspective because, another characteristic, I often go into kind of victim mode, right? This is being done to me, or I'm in a weaker
Mm.
position, or I'm not as smart as them, or I'm not as good as them, and I need to get smaller. I just need to disappear. That's not a helpful skill. You have this ability, which, some of it is learned, but also some of it, we've spoken to Andrew Bustamante several times. There's something about the personality of the kind of people who can work in these situations that does select for that. But I really like that notion, especially hearing that, from a woman, that like, I don't have to just be afraid.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I do want to tell you something. So the person planning my assassination is 1,000 times smarter than me. And it's really funny. So I reached out, to people in Libya and I said, hey, this terrorist, he's in Afghanistan, but the Libyans know him, is targeting me. I want to tell, the FBI something important about him so they take it serious. And so they said, oh, tell them he successfully assassinated 400 people in the city of Benghazi. I was like, perfect. So I go to tell the FBI, and they're like, we get threats all the time against like the commander of CENTCOM. It's like they didn't even hear it. So it's really, really funny too, because we have people who just don't listen and want to even understand some of these threat actors. And they are, in a lot of cases, smarter than us. They've run military operations all over the world. They've influenced thousands of people to join this crazy life where they literally harm people for a living. So it's a very interesting kind of dichotomy between the way you grow up in the Midwest, and then the way they kind of grow up and their families almost like push them into this, because this is a family affair. It's not like you usually have one terrorist in your family. There are multiple.
Let's explore the geopolitical landscape of what we're facing right now. I think if you can start to break apart, the different actors, organizations, because when you describe the FBI's reaction to your threat, I have to also imagine that they may be mismanaging or not actively pursuing leads. Like it sounds like there's a lot of misinformation. Can you describe for people sort of what the landscape is right now?
Sure, I'll answer the last part first. One of the problems with the government is if they didn't collect something, or if someone didn't directly come and give it to them on a silver platter and tell them, they want nothing to do with it, right? Because they're like, our sources don't have any of this info, so it's not good, and they move on. So it's a very, very frustrating thing. And we've seen this happen a lot with these strange threats against Trump, right? They're just behind on all of them.
Can you explain that?
Well, we have all these wackadoodles taking shots at a president. You shouldn't get to the point where someone lets off a gun, right? You should stop someone way before they even get into the vicinity. So we're behind on every one of those. For years, I wish the government was more honest with the American public, because we stopped so many terrorist plots. Like, I mean, I can't even tell you, maybe 40, 50, 60, probably 100. And so we know how to do it well. So when you see things not stopped, it's not being done well, unfortunately. And it's just a frustrating thing. It doesn't have to be the president, but when you just see it in his case, you're like, whoa, if you're dropping the ball there, then you're dropping the ball on these other threat issues we have, which is concerning.
That's what everybody's worried about. How,
Hmm.
I'm just going to make an example, how did a mentally ill individual enter, right, the White House within firing range of the president with no, like, that shouldn't happen. Like, I've been to the White House, right? I've been there more than once. Like, it's a thing. There's a way you can check people. It's like literally gated 4 times. Like, that, this shouldn't happen. Is that general incompetence or is it specific incompetence?
Yeah, I don't know what's happening. I think there is some incompetence. People get lackadaisical. Like you just start going through the motions. I think we saw that at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. We saw people like walking through the magnetometers and setting them off, and then nobody was patting them down. It was a very strange thing to see these videos come out. First off, I was also like, why are you just allowing someone to video the magnetometers and then put it on Twitter? So it's become very strange. I don't know if we're just becoming more lax on security, more lax on counterintelligence. I don't know if that's a cultural shift or what it is. Because remember, there are a lot of people who thought security was too much after 9/11. The government overstepped too. So it's always kind of like this delicate balance. And in a case of at least that dinner, these are high profile people. A lot of them were in the press. So there's probably some things made too. We don't want to inconvenience them. We don't want to cause issues.
But you've got people trying to actively take out the president. This used to be something once in several generations, a very unusual, mentally ill individual would have some elaborate, intricate way that they gained access to an event where, right, they could pull out a gun. I'm just like, my mind is sort of on fire right now, thinking that with a president who also is inspiring a lot of extra attention with the things that he says and the way that he says them, that, I mean, it's on par with accidentally leaking, a signal chat.
Raising questions.
Feels like a Saturday Night Live skit, like if you saw this in a skit, you'd be like, that would never happen. Yeah, we have a president who people are actively trying to assassinate, and people are getting close enough to try again. That's crazy to
Well,
me.
the crazy one too is like that Ryan Routh. Remember, he was hiding in the bushes. Well, before he did that, he built a deer blind in the tree. Like, no one saw a guy hammering a deer blind into the tree by the Palm Beach International Airport. He wasn't in a hunting zone. When do we stop paying attention or be observant to things going on around us? That makes me really nervous that awareness is going away just for normal people. People walk, they got their phone. I'm almost hitting people all the time. They're like walking and like looking at your phone. I was like, you're in the middle of a street. But it's just this crazy thing. It's like our heads are in the sand or something. And then that's in a lot of different ways, because you have to remember a lot of things get stopped or thwarted because a citizen saw something and said, wow, that's strange. That's odd. Why is that here? And they report it. So that is super important to keeping everybody safe.
That terrifies me because we're in our phones now. We're less socially connected than ever before. It used to be you would know your neighbor. So all of a sudden, if 6 guys moved into the apartment above you, you'd be like, that's different than the family that used to live there. Why are they going in and out? Why are all these people around? And now people may be like, okay, that's just the way it is. I'm going to just focus on my Netflix and I'm not going to pay attention. Are we becoming more vulnerable because our social connections are fraying?
Yeah, I think we're definitely becoming more vulnerable. I think there's got to be a shift. I mean, bad things happen, and then people realize, I missed it. I don't know if you remember, like a few months back, there was like that shooting in Austin. Well, the crazy part is the guy was in a pickup. He came by the front of the building 3 times, and on the third time did the shot. If you're out there and this guy even comes around a second time and looks a little like a nut job, like wouldn't you get out of there or tell people? And so we have to start saying, hey, I missed that. I was standing there as these 3 things happened, like in some la la land. At least those people now are smarter for the next time. I mean, it's sad we have to learn that way, but I do think we will get back to a sense of awareness at some point, because you have to, at the end of the day, keep yourself safe, or your children or your family in some way. And we have to get away from this reliance and connection to social media and get back to real life.
It feels like we have a false sense of security, like the US hasn't been attacked on our soil since 9/11, and we assume that there aren't active threats because most of war happens on the other side of the world. But that feels like it's a very, delusional sense of safety, and that we may not have all the intelligence or the people working on our behalf to prevent something else from happening soon.
Yeah, I mean, it's a scary thing. After New Orleans, we found out that terrorist went and cased, obviously, New Orleans, but he came here and cased Tampa. So he's got his glasses on and he's walking around the Riverwalk in Tampa, where I go all the time. And we didn't learn it till after he committed an attack. Well, that's a very scary thing, right? That's not when you want to find out that ISIS has cased your city. So I do feel we're behind, and a lot of it is we left Afghanistan. According to the commander of CENTCOM, we gave up 98% of our intelligence collection there, including human. So if you don't have networks collecting on the threat overseas, you then have to collect on them here, and it's so much harder because now they're in a hidden role, right? They're not hearing their true name. They're not going around saying, I'm going to commit a terrorist attack. So it's just so much more difficult if you wait till the threat's already here to work it. And I feel like we really dropped the ball on this.
When 9/11 happened, and depends on your age and where you were in life. I was in college when 9/11 happened, and it was terrifying. It was really terrifying. And, without freaking my kids out, I try and explain to them the immensity of that moment, because in many ways it has been forgotten, right? And one of the things that we want to believe, right, is that our country is constantly on guard for us, right? They're constantly patrolling, monitoring, but in practicality, you actually can't do that all the time everywhere, right? And I think October 7th, right, was this microcosm of showing what happens in such a tiny country, right, when things go unnoticed, and not unnoticed when people's reports, right, are not trusted. And the thing about 9/11, I remember learning that there was a group of guys taking flight lessons who ended up being the terrorists who flew the planes into the World Trade Center. And they very curiously had no interest in learning how to land the plane. And it's like, if you saw that in a script, you would laugh. Can you imagine, right, a group of individuals asking to learn how to have a plane take off, but don't worry, we don't need to know how it lands, right? Like, it's crazy. Can you talk about some of that disconnect and how that does reflect on, for those of us who wanted to believe that we had a certain amount of security, what does that mean about our country?
Yeah, I mean, that was the complaint that came out of the 9/11 Commission is we completely lacked imagination, right? We heard these things, but we thought, oh, they're sensationalized. Like we couldn't put the dots together, which is crazy because Al Qaeda already had their Bojinka plot, which was like 11 or 12 airlines that was thwarted. So it's very strange. We had a previous plot and nobody could put that together. But I do think it's like we're always preparing for the last event and we're not good at thinking future, thinking how things evolve or change to where it's hard to picture it and then to say, oh, I have enough evidence that what I'm picturing and hearing and seeing is fact. So that's very, very difficult because until it happens, you're not right or correct or true at all. Even in the current new plotting, there's all these suicide bombers in it. Okay. Now, in the United States, we've never had a suicide bombing. There's this strange incident in Nashville where the gentleman kind of blew himself up in a car. So that would technically be one, and that's it. So think of it. We have an entire country that no law enforcement except maybe LAPD and NYPD have any like standard operating procedure at all for suicide bombers. So that is a strategic surprise, even though it's not some genius out of the box thought. It is now something that can cause shock and awe in a way. And then you poo poo it because you're like, oh, it's just suicide bombers. Like they should do some big extravagant thing with drones and all this thing. So we also have the other side of the coin too, where threats get downplayed because it's like, well, why aren't the terrorists doing something bigger? It's like, well, that is bigger. So it is a constant struggle to get out of the group think, to get out of only thinking of 9/11, and that's exactly what an attack looks like. And then to really get the public aware, because the public thinks terrorists haven't tried to attack us. So, yes, they have. We stop them every single time. We took out, gosh, 8 or 9 of Al Qaeda's external operation leaders, one after one after one after one, to stop the attacks here. And now we're not. We have not taken one strike on the leader of external operations for Al Qaeda in a decade. So it is different than it was, in the mid 2000s, 2005, 2010, when we were so aggressive. We stepped back and said, hey, we're moving on to other threats. China being a great example. Counterterrorism's in the past, we're done with it. And unfortunately, the enemy gets a vote. And so it's not done. And we are behind.
I'm glad to hear you articulate it that way. I'm that jerk when I fly and go through TSA who cannot believe that one guy put a bomb in his shoe and now we all have to take off. Like, I'm that person because I feel like there's this like laser focus that makes us feel like we're protecting ourselves and it makes us feel like we're doing something. And like, I will not show you my Ziploc of my toilet. I will not. I've never done it. Like, I'm just like, I cannot handle this. And I know I don't need to blame, the hardworking TSA people. They're following the orders, but it also feels a little bit like literally Joseph Heller's Catch-22. Like it's Slaughterhouse-5. Like I feel like we are living in a science fiction kind of near apocalyptic, perception of threat, of danger, and of the limitations that we have against actually understanding what's happening. And it's interesting because when 9/11 happened, anyone that I knew who had ever flown an Israeli airline knew exactly what was happening. And like, it was like, oh, okay, now that here, right? I mean, I spent my teen years, it was the first Intifada and then second Intifada. So, that's what it feels like, is that it's getting easier for these things to kind of infiltrate, but we need to get smarter, right?
No, it's a really great example because, as you said, history's falling by the wayside. And so we ended up getting, a new head of DHS. She's gone now, Christy Nome, but it's like she doesn't seem to have understood the shoe bomber at all. And she's like, yeah, why are we inconveniencing people to take off their shoes? And they reverse that. Well, The week after they reversed it, Al-Qaeda put the shoe bomb back on the table. And right now they're testing a number of prototypes. So the shoe bomb's coming back because we said, yeah, we're not going to scan for it anymore. If you tell the terrorists that, they should think you have the best scanning in the world and nothing's getting through because that's how it stays shelved. So unfortunately, the shoe bomb's coming back, but it's crazy because we solved that issue and then we just welcome it back.
That's the title of this episode. The shoe bomb is coming back. So I shouldn't be annoyed.
Yeah.
I should take off my shoes and put
Please.
everything in my little Ziplocs. But they're going to come up with something else.
Yeah, and there is this invisible bomb. It's very famous. It's been around for years. It's the same bomb that was used on Christmas in the underwear. Remember that, like 15 years ago? Same bomb. So they've now made that smaller. And
What's
you can kind of like wrap it around your body.
It's Christmas in the underwear. It sounds like a holiday drink that you get at Cheesecake Factory. What is Christmas in the underwear?
Luckily, he soiled himself. The good part is, remember, this is a very stressful situation for the terrorists. So they're stressed, they're nervous, things happen. He soiled himself, and that harmed the bomb. Even the shoe bomb, he got moisture in his shoe. That's why the bomb didn't work. So we sometimes get lucky, and so lucky is a good thing. But that's why I always say, you work hard, you work hard, you work hard. The luck happens because you spent so much time trying to stop it and throw it and protect people.
Okay, so what's the invisible bomb?
It's called invisible or hidden because it has no metal components. And it's a bomb you can walk through a magnetometer. Okay. So you can't walk through a millimeter wave scanner, the weird one you put your arms on, but you can walk through like what you go into a sporting event or what you go into the White House correspondents' dinner. You can walk straight through that.
Or my synagogue, right? I mean, like that's the kind of detector.
Well, maybe not. Synagogues are pretty well protected, which is a good thing. But then when you go to detonate it, it's a binary reaction. So there's a chemical in the vest, and then you have a chemical in like a syringe, or you can use a pen, and you inject it, and then that starts it. So it's really a smart invention. It's now then, okay, this is how it is. This is how it's built. How do we counter it?
Why do you think we haven't seen more of these deployed?
There are some rumors that they tested this bomb a couple times in Somalia, maybe when they went after their intelligence building, but I've not actually got someone to show me a picture to prove it. But there are people saying they tested it in Somalia, and people in Somalia saying that. Now, the point is they don't want this bomb found prior to doing their next big 9/11. So that's what Al-Qaeda is waiting for. So again, they're going to be their strategic surprise when they use these. And what they want to do is about 10% of their attackers in their upcoming plotting, they want to be suicide bombers in some form.
Sarah, I just don't feel good when we talk.
Well, I think that's the point, right? Like if we don't ever think about these things, if we don't ever realize that there are people on the other side of the world who have not just forgotten about us, who their objective in life is to cause harm in the next wave in some way, then we won't be ready. We won't have the intelligence. Can you go back a little bit in our conversation where you said in the 90s we were actively removing heads of the planning operations of Al-Qaeda? What is being planned now? What do we know is in the works? Can you give us a bit of a framework of how their organization has developed in the absence of us continuing to remove parts of their planning organizations?
Yeah, so our last major strike on Al-Qaeda Central was in 2022, and we took out the head of Al-Qaeda, then Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri. But prior to that, Al-Qaeda planned a number of, you said the word perfectly, waves of attacks. So they helped in the October 7th plotting. They worked on the Syrian blitzkrieg. There is a similar Iraq blitzkrieg. There's a bunch of attacks planned against U.S. embassies and then different Jewish sites overseas, being synagogues or different kind of like cultural centers. And then they do have a big European plot and then the big U.S. homeland plot. Now, the problem like we saw in Israel got like little pieces, right? They knew something was coming, but they never knew it was at this scale. I had friends that passed some things to Israel saying, hey, it's very strange. Hamas is here in Afghanistan training in the camps we're collecting in. Like, this is really, really weird. And so it was like they didn't put things together quick enough or did not think the scale. And I think we're having the same problem. We're having difficulty viewing the scale. And I do think Israel should put out more because nobody really knows that there were like 8,000 terrorists in that attack, and they weren't all Hamas. So there were members of Al-Qaeda, there were members of ISIS, there were even members of the Taliban. They got flown back in their dead bodies to Kandahar. I had people at the airport watching it happen. So I think this kind of keeping information tightly controlled is really making it so people lose the idea of thinking, hey, these can be connected. Hey, this is bigger than we think. Hey, these terrorists have regrouped. They can plan again. They are strong again, and we're their target. They've only have two real targets: the United States and Israel. Every meeting only talks about the United States and Israel. We just have to be honest about that because we're in the crosshairs.
Let's spend a little bit of time connecting these organizations. You said something that I think most people have no idea about, that it wasn't just Hamas attacking on October 7th, that they were training in Al-Qaeda camps. Can you explain more about this interconnection? Because it doesn't sound like it's one organization. Most people think, oh, Hamas has their agenda and they're just, upset with Israel, but you're painting a totally different picture.
I think this is also a good opening to the common denominator for basically every organization that you've mentioned is Iran.
Mm-hmm.
That's like
Yes.
the elephant in the room.
Yes. And that's where I was going to start. So there is like a structure, is the best way to put it, okay, in terrorism. So you have Iran, and then everybody who kind of falls under them. You have Al Qaeda, and who falls under them. You have ISIS, and then who falls under them. And then you have the Muslim Brotherhood, all kind of interlinked, okay? So there has been a strategic alignment first between Al Qaeda and Iran. And it's happened very simply. When the US went into Afghanistan, the senior terrorists had to go somewhere. They could go to Pakistan or they could go to Iran. So they first started going to Pakistan, and then we started picking them up, right? We got Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, we got Faraj al-Libi, and they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Pakistan is not going to be safe. Their government is all in with the US government. So where do we go? Iran. So Al Qaeda had to start making close relationships with the Iranians, certain units, most of the Quds Force. So Qasem Soleimani was a big one, and he's dead now. But Mohammad Kazemi, the last head of the intelligence organization, IRGC, super, super close to Al Qaeda. And so they made these historic relationships, and then Osama bin Laden trusted these two men to protect his children and his grandchildren, and Saif al-Adil stayed with them and he protected them. And then even the terrorist running my plot, he lived with Soleimani. So that has happened now over 20 years. So that's a very, very close, tight relationship. So, of course, when they started planning the attacks, in Israel, they needed the leverage of where are we going to train these people and where are we going to hold them? These are thousands of terrorists. So they chose six camps in Afghanistan and trained them there. And a lot of people aren't honest, but a lot of them lied in wait in Syria. That's why so many of them were hooked on Captagen, because they're waiting to go do the terrorist attack, and they're taking drugs because they're not doing anything. They're like locked up in a building. And so that's all this convergence of Iran linked to Al Qaeda with Taliban support. And so they kind of just gave Hamas this boost. But they have other plots going. So it wasn't their top priority, but it's like, let's make this successful for Hamas because they're attacking Israel, but we're still staying focused, on the US and Europe and Syria and our other plots.
Jonathan and I get to talk to all sorts of interesting people here, and, you're absolutely fascinating. But I can't help but think of, we talk to people who are versed in simulation theory, right? And the fact that so much of the world that we live in, it doesn't only feel unreal, it has a lot of kind of, echoes of what many of us would associate with. I think a game seems too flippant a term, but like, I'm going to say something crazy. if we kind of like throw a spiritual blanket over this whole conversation, right? Like, why are humans here? How did we evolve? Like, what did we get placed on this planet to do? I'm pretty certain that hatred, division, war, murder, suicide bombings, this is not our natural state, right? Like,
Mm-mm.
this is not our natural state. If you believe in any religious or spiritual tradition, or if you've had a good journey on mushrooms, you know that like above the clouds, it's always sunny, right? Like there's a larger goodness and hope that we all come from, right? Like picture us in whatever stage of evolution you want to, right? So when I think of these conversations, like I can't help but feeling like we're in some twisted game where people have harbored, hatred and, all of these, and they're plotting to kill themselves so that they can kill other people. And then you get these elaborate militaries that need to protect against that. And they do horrible things to try and prevent those other people from killing, like, and on and on and on.
And those actions justify the hatred, which then
Correct.
justifies the need to retaliate, and on you go.
And I don't know if there's a question here, but yeah, I guess I'm curious with all of your resilience and your patience and your scrappiness, how do you place this in a larger context? Like, are we in some giant simulation and, you're just a very active and interesting player,
No, it's really interesting because one of the hardest things to view is what is an end game after terrorism? Is there ever going to be an end game after terrorism? Well, I saw like a microcosm of it just earlier this month. So I went back to Libya. I went back to Benghazi at the beginning of May. And for a long time, Benghazi was extremely dangerous. Remember, I lived there. There was assassinations every day. Actually, Al-Qaeda and ISIS ended up taking over the entire city. And then there was a civil war to push them out. So the civil war started in 2014 and in 2017. And so I've been wanting to get back since because the terrorists are completely gone from Benghazi. And I say it publicly. And I think people roll their eyes at me and they're like, she's so naive. I'm like, I need to go back and see it for myself. And so I did go back and I saw a city with the terrorists gone when I had been there when the terrorists were there. And it was night and day. Okay. So like I didn't feel danger. I didn't feel unsafe for 1 second the whole entire time I was there. The other thing is when I was in Benghazi, I rarely saw women. I maybe saw 3 women fully covered. When I was there this time, there was like 70% more women than men. Every other driver on the road was a woman. I think there was more women driving than men. The markets were full of women hanging out with their friends. I went to the hospital. Most of the staff were women. And so it's this thing, it's like you almost need to see that. You almost need to see life after terrorism. Now, huge parts of the city are completely destroyed. Rebuilding is so expensive. It takes so much time, so much work, and you have to do it because then terrorists might come in and give you that aid and benefit if you don't. So it's not 100% done and finished yet, but you see it and people are happy. They're living lives. They're not worried their sons are going to be indoctrinated. And like when you see an end state, you're like, okay, this is what you want. This is what you aim for and get to. But I'm going to tell you that war was a nightmare, right? They lost 8,000 local troops. The terrorists were killing off entire bloodlines. I know Libyans, over 20 men in their family, boys, men, grandfathers were killed so they couldn't carry on the bloodlines. It was tragic. And I wish more of the world would talk about it because it is a success against terrorism, but it takes a lot to get there. There's lots of ripple effects, and we have to start thinking what is an end state and how do you actually get to that end state and help people to like live again so they're not under Al-Qaeda or ISIS because it is a horrible life to be under them.
I understand that politics is no longer a line. It's just a big weird circle, right? It's like so we're hearing from certain fringes of the left, which I do not identify with, this fringe. And it's also, we're hearing it from certain fringes of the right. And they're coming together in this way of like, I don't want to be involved in anything foreign. It's not our business. Let them figure it out. Do you feel like you can weigh in from your perspective on, and also I understand we don't just like carry a big stick. We're not the cops of the world. Like I'm not looking for that. But, I was raised by civil rights activists. So I was taught from the values of what happened in Vietnam, right? How horrible things can go when the government is left unchecked and when we're not given appropriate information. How do you translate that to a conversation about a completely different culture of terrorism that violates many of the values that we hold true in the West, but which take a tremendous amount of resources and troops and time to actually invest in? How do we justify that?
It's very interesting. So there are different thought processes on this, but the fact is, if a country is only caring internally about itself, it has no outward goals or ambitions, that's easier to say, hey, we don't have a dog in the fight here. We don't need to get involved here. That's kind of why even a lot of people didn't like how we went in and helped the Afghans when the Soviets came in, right? We're like, this isn't our fight, like, etc. But when you have a situation now where, like in Afghanistan, Syria, parts of Northern Africa, they're putting these training camps together and these terrorists are only going through them to come and attack the West, you're in a much different situation, right? Because you're like, well, if their goal is to train and come here, we have a problem and we have to stop that in some way. Now, Israel's a different situation because Israel constantly has that problem. We did a really good job of thwarting attacks overseas, so Americans don't get that feeling. Israel, you're attacked every week. You have this constant barrage. And then, of course, when October 7th happened, the level that happened at, you can't go out and tell your people, oh, we're going to be light on this. You have to say, we're never going to let this happen again, just like America said with 9/11. So it's this difficult situation. Then how do you make it never happen again? Hamas is a gigantic terrorist organization, as we've known, because they've killed what, 50,000 Hamas members, and Hamas is not defunct. It's crazy. Then there's other allies. Hezbollah is on a whole nother level. And then it doesn't matter anyway, because of course they have Iran over top, and Iran has very key relationships, like with Al-Qaeda, which is 3 times the size of Hezbollah and Hamas. So the problem is, it's how do you strategically go at these groups? And the US has always said, but keep them overseas. So that's the way we focused on it. Keep the insanity, the suicide bombings, the terrorist attacks overseas, and we'll be fine. And that has been our goal. And now we stopped doing that. And they're probably coming here. Israel constantly is being attacked. So they have to view it a lot different. It can be, we're going to be attacked every single day. How do we make it so it goes down to only once a month? How do we make it to goes once a year? How do we stop it completely? And that is almost an impossible problem to deal with. Like, I couldn't give you the right answer for it. So we are in a tough spot. Now, one thing people need to know the truth of is terrorism today is much bigger than terrorism on 9/11. So on 9/11, Al-Qaeda was 5,000 members. Now, worldwide, they have over 200,000. This is a much bigger problem. On 9/11, they had 8 terrorist camps. Right now, just in Afghanistan, they have 50. Then they got camps in Syria and Yemen, in North Africa, on and on. So we don't get to the pleasure of saying, well, we got to think of it like it's September 2001. It's a much bigger problem, unfortunately. It's going to take different solutions, and not anyone knows the best solution. I don't know the best solution because, as was said, you then also don't want to make more terrorists.
But that seems to be exactly what, like, can you say those numbers again, the numbers from 9/11 to now? You said that there were 5,000 Al-Qaeda members when 9/11 happened, and now there are 200,000?
Yes, it's massive. And they're worth billions and billions of dollars, so they don't need to borrow $500,000 from the bin Ladens to do an operation.
So I'm going to ask a dumb question, and this is not my field of expertise. Fear is my field of expertise. Was it because 9/11 was seen as so successful that people decided this is the organization to join if you hate the West?
I think it's more nuanced than that. Sadly, I think the biggest jump happened when we invaded Iraq. And then Al-Qaeda was able to say, hey, we planned 9/11 from Pakistan and Afghanistan. The US is invading Iraq to destroy the Middle East, to harm Muslims. And that, I think, was the huge turning point to where they were be able to stand on a mountain and say, see, we told you this is all America wants to do. They want to come in here and harm us, take over the Middle East. And I think that's where the trajectory went kind of out of our control, unfortunately.
Talk about the training camps that we know about, because it sounds like they are the college for any satellite group. You go there to get your master's degree in terrorism.
Yeah. The sad part is the terrorist camps actually start around 9 or 10 years old. It's really traumatic. So we're just going to jump to a military age person. So when you're a military age person, there's a couple different pathways you take. Of course, you just do some sort of indoctrination, and then you can basically kind of go to be a fighter, or you can go to be a suicide bomber. And they are different trajectories. And then there's suicide bomber camps, and then there's these fighter camps. Now, the interesting thing that's different than in the old days, so in the old days, so the camp, Al Farouk camp, it was called, that 9/11 was planned out of, every guy in it was Al Qaeda. Now, Al Farouk's reopened. Everyone in Al Farouk is not Al Qaeda. They actually did train members of Hamas in there, for example. So now it's like almost this open training ground. It doesn't matter if you're Al Shabaab. Heck, Boko Haram has been there. ARSA out of Bangladesh. Come to Afghanistan. We'll train you at the best level we can. We'll give you sustenance. We'll give you arms. Like, we are, again, the base of terrorism. Come here, become an expert at whatever you want to be, right? Is it shooting? Is it guerrilla warfare? Is it urban operations? Is it suicide bombing? Suicide bombing is, of course, very concerning. Come here, we'll make you the best we can make you, no matter what terrorist group you're a part of. And so that's very a la carte, but it's also very similar to how it happened during the Afghan Mujahideen. It didn't matter what country you came from or what terrorist group or what Islamist organization you're affiliated with, we're all one, and they're getting back to that mindset.
You said that they don't need $500 million from the bin Laden family. Where are they being funded from now?
Sure. And it was only 500,000. So 9/11 only costed 500,000.
My
So
my mistake, yeah.
no, you're fine. You're fine. I just wanted to. So it's crazy. Okay. So you have to look at it in two ways. There's illicit money, and then there's legitimate businesses. So illicit money, the most they make off of is opium in Afghanistan. They get 20% of all like the revenues out of that. So it's a huge chunk. It's like 1.5 billion a year just off that. Then they run and get a cut of different mines, not just in Afghanistan, but all over North Africa. We're talking gold mines, emerald mines, heck, uranium mines, etc. So they get a cut of all these mines. All that's black market. Now, legally, they run ports. So Al Qaeda owns a huge chunk of some of the ports in Egypt, some of the ports in Somalia. They also run over 50% of the Hajj travel. So you can just be a normal, everyday Muslim. You live in, I don't know, Algeria, and you're going to do the Hajj, and you book through a travel agency. That travel agency is owned by Al Qaeda. You have no idea, but they smartly got into that business because they knew they would need it to move terrorists all around. They get so much money off legitimate travel, you wouldn't even believe it. So it's a mix of things. And then unfortunately, all this aid, it's not just aid, those counterterrorism dollars. So don't just think this is humanitarian money. So the humanitarian money, counterterrorism money, are flooding into like Afghanistan, and Al Qaeda gets a cut of that. So US tax dollars through State Department, CIA, Department of Defense, World Bank, UN, IMF, World Food Program, we are literally funding Al Qaeda with our own dollars right now.
And it's very hard to parse out which dollars are going where, how that money is flowing. It's like not so easy to keep track of. Is there real aid being delivered, or it's just being siphoned out?
Yeah, so it's super unfortunate. They say it's not easy to follow the money because we're not in country anymore, but we've literally followed the money in vehicles. And I can tell you, it goes straight to terrorist camps, and you can follow it. So you can follow it with like a drone. So they're lying that they can't figure it out. But there are different buckets. So the aid money is it's a mess. It's filtered through like the local bank in Afghanistan. It goes back out to buy products, comes back in. So by the time you get to, let's say, rice, okay, so I'm going to deliver rice to this village outside Nangarhar. Well, it now goes to the families the Taliban chose for it to go to. So they go deliver the rice to Taliban families, and it doesn't go to the women and children who really need it, former US allies, etc. And then another unfortunate thing is because the terrorists run the country, these aid organizations have to appease them. So, like the World Food Program literally delivers food to Al Qaeda camps, and it knows it is. We've watched their vehicles drive straight into these camps. So it's also a frustrating thing to watch people in the West be like, well, I want to keep taking in these donor dollars or this US funding, so I'm not going to be truthful and say our money isn't going to help poor orphans. It's going straight to foreign fighters and terrorist camps. So I find it very, very frustrating. I've long worked humanitarian issues, but as you know, there's so much corruption on the humanitarian side of things. Very small percentages of any dollars actually get to anyone who's really needing of something. And it's a huge problem. It's essentially money laundering in a lot of cases.
I want to get into university campus infiltration, but before we do, it feels like there's still some area to explore here with the camps and the training. You know, you said that our approach was keep it overseas as our defense strategy, but that isn't happening, right? Like, can you talk about the infiltration? Are there sleeper cells in the US that are basically waiting to be activated?
When we use the term sleeper cell, it's almost like a fear term because it kind of sounds like there's these guys all underground and they're waiting for a bat signal and then they're going to pop up and attack. And that's not how it works at all. So we have, according to, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, over 18,000 known foreign terrorists on U.S. soil, right? That's a government fact. Now, then you ask, well, what are these 18,000 terrorists doing? Because that's important to know. So some are literally like business operations, right? There's a lot of these from Hezbollah, for example, so and a little bit from Hamas, and they're here and they're collecting money, sending it back. They're doing influence media operations, and they might not have a plot to hit a certain location, right? Then you do have what I call the fighter side of a terrorist group, and those people are here to commit an attack, but they're not sleeping. So they're doing surveillance, they're building bombs, they're researching, right? They research online about you and then they go outside your home and you see them when you're walking your dog. So that stuff is happening. So they're not like sitting around playing Xbox, like, what am I going to do my attack? They constantly have taskings that they're working on, even if it's just casing for something else, right? I might case this location or something Al Qaeda wants to do in the future. And there's a lot of different infrastructure pieces. Safe houses is huge, right? It's a huge chunk of time because people have to have a place to live. The Al Qaeda plot's been delayed. So that's expensive. You got to keep people in these locations. You got to figure out what to do with them. You don't want them to get impatient. If they get impatient, they might just lose it and go do an attack. So we had one of the homeland attackers. Long story short, he was supposed to stay in Turkey and go from there to the US. He got freaked out. He went to Germany. He couldn't find his pathway to the US. He kind of lost it a bit. And he stabbed 5 people outside of a sports bar. So he's not coming to the US, which is good for us. But for Al Qaeda, they didn't train him well enough. He wasn't patient enough. And he kind of like lost it and could have messed up other parts of the plot. So they constantly also have to feed these terrorists in a way so they don't get bored. I know that's a crazy, sad way to put it. But yes, there are plenty of sleeper cells in the United States from pretty much every terrorist group we can name. Al Qaeda. ISIS says they have 2,500 here in an illegal status. So that's, you're not an American because they have American members. You're not here in a green card. They have green card members. These are people who don't have any paperwork at all. That's a big number.
How many?
2,500 who aren't like American, and then they have Americans and other, of course, recruits. So that's a big number and a scary number. Remember, those people are completely off the books. They don't have like, well, they might have a driver's license in some states, but who knows what name it's in. There's an interesting part. We've talked about religious institutions. I've done a lot of work when people reached out to me and said, hey, we've had these casing incidents. It's at my church or my synagogue, wherever it can be. We even just saw, obviously, this attack at the mosque in San Diego. Now, this happened in California. I won't say the name. I don't want to freak anyone out. At a large church. And so we gave them all these tips because these 2-man and 4-man teams kept coming. So we said, you need to bring them into kind of like the parish area, have a conversation, say you have to give your driver's license. So they started doing that, getting better pictures. And when they were getting their driver's license, they were getting those licenses that said no name given on them. So we took one of the no name given licenses in California. It was a California license. And then we looked at the address on it, and there was 1,500 driver's licenses registered to that address, and it was a 1-bedroom apartment. So there's huge corruption in some of these driver's license systems, and the data's there. Right? You can go and look through those 1,500 people, go talk to them. So the data's there, but there are people, some states not doing anything about it. And I think it's a very frustrating thing because, if his church gets attacked, it's going to be with these individuals with these licenses with no name on, and we don't know who they are. And that's a whole nother mess then to identify them after the fact. Remember, at 9/11, they had their real passports. We knew exactly who they were, what country they came from, and now we don't know who these people are.
Valerie just typed, you can't even like change your address with the DMV without like going to 4 different offices and petitioning and getting like a proof from your bank, right? Like I can't do shit with my driver's license.
It's crazy.
And this is happening.
Yeah. And a lot of it's probably corruption or someone under the table. We had in Florida just people paying like $200 for driver's licenses for like to drive the big trucks. And it was just corruption. It was a person in the office taking money. They weren't getting any approvals. The state cracked down after, but they gave them to a bunch of people. So you have both sides of the coin, right? You have criminal activity and then you have terrorism. And when do you decide what this is? That's very complicated.
This is sort of a hope that you can maybe provide a little bit of insight, with, I hope, the best of intentions, which I believe you have. When people try and analyze terrorism, right? And this does generally tend to come from the left, like if you want to know, that's where it falls on this circle that used to be a line, right? There's always a reason, right, that we can blame the US, our policy. We do many horrible things, like many, many horrible things all over the world, right? But there's a tendency to try and be able to find the reason, right? What did I do to deserve this? What did we do to deserve this? Can you talk a little bit, and I say this, with a tremendous affection for the time that I have spent in the Middle East. This has nothing to do with if you're Arab, if you're Muslim, if you're Jewish, if you're Christian. There's a different culture in the Middle East, right? Like even waiting on a line to like get your food. Like people don't wait on lines the same. You just kind of like shove your way to the front, right? It's a different culture. Like it has different, Can you talk a little bit about what it is about the culture of terrorism, which is, very specific? What is it, and how can we teach people not to have their first reaction be, well, it's because the U.S. is messing things up all over the world. It's something we did, and can you give us a framework of what it looks like also? This is a business you're describing. I never thought of terrorism like that, right? I knew all the horrible things they did, and there's a lot of members, but I never thought of it like there's someone running the books so that we know which hotels to put them in and how are they going to eat and where are they going to get the information and what's the pamphlet and how do we teach them to be patient so that they don't lose their minds because we've indoctrinated them to be mentally ill, right? You're indoctrinating an insanity, right? That you should die instead of live, right? Talk a little bit about the culture just from also your experience, the culture of terrorism.
Yeah. I mean, the simplest way usually to put it that at least people can grasp onto is the fact of like this Islamist caliphate. Okay. And so the last one was the Ottoman Empire, which people, when you say Islamist caliphate, they think, oh, she's talking about something thousands of years ago. And that was, relevant when our grandparents were around, right? So it's not like the terrorists have some medieval thought process. And so what they want to do is just bring back this caliphate, is the simplest way to put it. Now, these are the Islamists. Okay, so these aren't everyday Muslims. These are the terrorists. So we're talking about Muslim Brotherhood on the political side, and then we're talking Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Hamas, Hezbollah, etc. So when they have this Islamist caliphate that they talk about, it will only be them. So there'll be no Christians, there will be no Jews, there will be no Druze. I mean, you can go on and on and on.
There will be no secular people.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Then you have no Muslims who don't think like them. This is like almost like I told you in Benghazi. So they'll kill your bloodlines, right? So they don't have this secular, they will kill the police and the military and the judges and the lawyers, etc., because they want everyone to have this extreme lifestyle and thought process. And sadly, we saw that in real time. We saw when ISIS went in and really took land, and they did control these areas in Iraq and in Syria like this. They even went into Libya. Sirte was a good example, right? Every woman went under a burqa. Women at over 6 stopped going to school. Like, they put it in place very, very, very quickly. And you have to remember, and I think this gets lost in the West. So in the West, we're like, well, the only way to stop that is we go in and save these people. Like, they forget the locals are fighting them. So when ISIS was defeated in Iraq, it's not because the US went in, it's because the Kurds, right? When ISIS was defeated in Benghazi, it's because the locals did it with their bare hands. So we have to remember Muslims are fighting these Islamists more, 10 times longer and 10 times more all day long than we are, because they don't want this either. But the terrorists have this thought, hey, we're going to make this happen. We're going to get here. And that's what they're super focused on. Now, in their mind, the only hurdle to this happening is the US and Israel having an influence over the Middle East. If we didn't have this influence, of course, Qatar and Saudi Arabia and UAE would join our Islamist caliphate, right? Because they're a little delusional, right? They've been brainwashed in a way. And so they are very focused on a big idea, and we're in the way. That's the best, simplest way to put it. It's so much more.
No, that's really helpful. And I think the thing that strikes me is, and I happen to be, a person of faith. So, a lot of times people love to point out, this is all because of religion, and there's no God, and if it wasn't for religion, nobody would fight. This is not even a religious concept, what's happening here. Like, you're describing something that is not because of a religious structure. It's a psychological structure, and it's outside of Islam. It's outside of Judeo-Christianity. It's even outside of all the other branches of Christianity and Catholicism that we can talk about. And I think that's sort of where, in many cases, in an open-hearted attempt to accept all people, right, and let people have, their lives, oh, well, this is just the way some people are practicing religion. Religion's the problem, right? This is not a religious problem. This is an ideological one.
Yeah, they use religion as the tool to influence and manipulate you. But the interesting thing is I was reading, it was just on X, and it was a gentleman in the UAE. He took a trip to the West, and he went to just the local mosque because he wanted to pray while he was traveling. And he said it was crazy. They were talking about jihad openly in the mosque. Like, that's illegal in the UAE. So the funny part is we have allowed this to occur because of our own, I guess, suicidal empathy. But if you go to a mosque in some of these other countries, you go in Saudi Arabia, you go in UAE, you go in Oman, you're not going to hear this type of language and rhetoric. You're not going to see this indoctrination piece. You don't see it. You're not going to go into a mosque in Benghazi right now and be indoctrinated. I can promise you that much. And so why do we allow it? It's a very strange thing. And we have gotten a little soft on this when we have partners. these governments can tell us, here's the framework, here's how we do it, here's why we do it. And it's like we don't even care to listen to them and learn from them when they are doing it the right way. And it's very concerning.
When you talked about Benghazi and how the society evolved after terrorism, I was heartened to believe that there's another way out, right? There is a way out. But what I was concerned by is, where did those terrorists go? Because they didn't just decide not to be terrorists, they just left Benghazi. Where did they go?
Sure. So yeah, the good part with Benghazi, it was a city that was anti-terror. So that was a good starting point. Now, what happened is they did the civil war and they went neighborhood by neighborhood, which people don't like in other countries apparently, and battled them. So actually, about 50% of them died on the battlefield, which is crazy. I'd say about 10% of them are detained, and then maybe 15%, and then the other maybe 35%. Yeah, like you said, kind of went into the wind. Now, there is a small percentage that left terrorism, but it's a very small percentage. And then the rest went over to the other side of Libya. So they're kind of in the Tripoli area. They joined other groups. Some left. There's about a dozen in Turkey. There's other ones in Europe. And then we, of course, have them now moving again to Afghanistan. So they do proliferate, and lots of times they move to the next war zone. So initially they just went to Syria, as you can imagine. Now they're all going to Afghanistan again, because that's the new kind of base of jihad. So these terrorists will move constantly. I know terrorists that went Bosnia to Afghanistan to Algeria to Iraq to Syria. It's crazy. They need to go to the next jihad in their mind.
Can you describe a little bit about what's happening inside American universities and the very complicated business of funding ideology that is actually starting to pull the US apart and making us really lose track about where threats are coming from, who's on the side of good versus bad? Now, I don't want to simplify it so much to good and bad, but as you described, is an ideology that doesn't want people to live in harmony with one another. They want a very specific and controlled way of life. Can you describe how that is infiltrating our school systems?
Did you just say specific and controlled? That's also, yeah, it's a gentle way to put it.
It is a gentle way to put it. I was trying not to use inflammatory language.
It's difficult if you're in an environment that might be some indoctrination around it or radicalization around it, because you're not going to admit that it's happening, right? Because I wouldn't fall for something like that. So it's a hard thing to define, because it's hard to also put people down who have no clue what's going on, but they're getting down this pathway. So it's very complicated. Foreign actors who influence our university, they put the money in, and then it gives them the job titles. They get to affect curriculum. They get to open different kind of institutions on the campus. Where the influence is in the youngest generations. If we get them now, right, they will think like us, act like us, aid us, as they grow. ISIS, they do a lot of recruiting and engineering programs, right? So they know this is the core time to get the brightest, to get the most influential, to maybe even get people who are a little bit wealthy, that they do target wealthy institutions, because they're going to become someone. And when they become someone, they can parrot our talking points, and they'll be influenced by us. And we have now a little bit of control, and they have a positive view for us. It's very smart, but it's hard to get universities to admit this is happening because they want this money. It's so much money. It funds a lot of research. It helps them expand, and it's a very difficult thing to deal with, I've noticed.
Why are terrorists recruiting engineering students at our universities?
Yeah, so they focus on engineers because engineers think outside the box. They're creative. Like I said, a lot of them come from wealthier families, and which gives them an influence piece. And then, of course, just for the bomb making. So anyone can make a bomb, right? The three of us can sit online for 30 minutes and make a bomb. But how do you advance that, right? How do you try new chemicals? How do you do different things? So they want someone who thinks like that. And they might not even take the engineer and make him a bomb maker. They might take the engineer and he now makes fake passports. There's tons of engineers making fake passports. They just like the brains and the thinking. A lot of people think, oh, terrorists are like goat herders or they're uneducated and they're just vulnerable people picked up. But no, they actually like to focus on the elite. Because think of it, if I recruit this guy from Saudi, he's from a very wealthy family. Everybody kind of knows him. He's always done great in school. And now he's working for me, Al Qaeda. First off, no one's going to assume he's Al Qaeda right away. He has all the relationships and the connections. This is what people get confused about 9/11. They're like, oh, they have connections to the Saudi government. It's like, no, these were rich kids. They knew tons of people across their own society because of who they were. They had relationships and connections that predated being an Al Qaeda member. And the terrorists take such advantage of that because influence is so important. Remember, it's not about just shooting a gun, you need political influence. You have to buy your way into societies. And it's the same way China does it, but they do it different. So, China, for example, will be like, well, I want to make influence. They're not going to first go and try to make influence in the office of the president. They're going to go into local chambers of commerces and become members and start buying land and making relationships. The terrorists do the exact same thing because they know we need to be in these certain systems and these certain societies to legitimize who we are.
I was wondering if we can tackle two topics. One of them is Havana Syndrome. I know you have a very interesting experience that I'd love to hear about, but just today, a reporter who had been investigating Epstein said that she had to flee her New Mexico house because she was a target of what she described as very similar effects of what an energy weapon could be. Can you react to that? And also, maybe if people don't understand Havana Syndrome, describe what we're talking about.
Sure. So Havana Syndrome is a new term from when a lot of CIA and State Department officers felt this in Havana. I don't know what it was, 8 or 9 years ago. But this really goes back to really like the 1950s when we had an embassy in Russia and the Russians started targeting us with these weapons that we call, they're really like pulses. So it's like, if you kind of like just tick, right? You tick, tick, tick at yourself. It's a simple, continuous pulse. Well, these pulses come at varying times and varying speeds, and then they mess with your nervous system because it hits it in a way it hasn't been hit before. I know that's the simplest way to put it, but that's what people are experiencing. Now, when they get one of these pulses, it then affects the central nervous system and affects different things. So a lot of it can be like maybe if you had meningitis, like just things you can't put thoughts together. You're having like a cloud fog. You're forgetting things. And then it can get more extreme to where you think about stepping, but your brain isn't telling your leg to move. So unfortunately, there's different extremes to where people can't work anymore. You can't think, you can't stay focused, you just can't work. You can't even stay focused for an hour in some cases because it's damaged your central nervous system so much. So for a long time, we knew Russia did this and it was covered up. Then in Havana, and then it went to Vienna and a couple other places like in Asia, so many people started reporting it, the government could basically no longer cover it up, but then they've also not found answers. So they don't want to say it's Russia, even though it's Russia, because they don't want to elevate a conflict.
Also, Havana Syndrome is officially known as anomalous health incidents.
Yeah.
I'm saying this, half joking. For many women who have long COVID, menopause, and autoimmune conditions, we have all these symptoms.
And lives.
We don't have Havana Syndrome, but these are the symptoms of something that has dysregulated your nervous system, right? In a way that is very hard to pin down, very hard to diagnose, very hard to find a cause, and very hard to treat. So you kind of try and treat all the symptoms, but that's really what this is. It's an unknown etiology, right?
Yeah, so the most simplest, less harmful effects of Havana Syndrome feel like long COVID or Lyme's. But because of who is targeted and how they were targeted, and they got targeted a lot more extreme, the worst cases, those people can't do normal daily functions or thinking or movements. And there's not like a cure or a solution, unfortunately. So the government shifted from calling it Havana Syndrome to anonymous health incidents as this effort to obfuscate it, because they're trying to pretend we don't know it's a foreign actor. Well, it targeted our best and brightest. And it targeted people who spent years overseas. You're not like delusional. Like, you know who the enemy is. You know when something directly is happening to you and impacting you. You know when something has changed. And when this weapon hits you, you actually physically feel it and know it. It's not like kind of one of those things like, when you fall asleep and there's an earthquake in California, you're like, what was that? Like, you don't know what it is at first. You know you're being hit by something. So it's not like you don't have the common sense. So then the problem is, if you're a victim of this, I mean, think about it. You have a government not being honest about it. They're not giving you the treatment you need. You have to be siloed into only certain treatment programs. And then, even in those, they're not writing everything down, they're influencing it. So you can't go out and just get any medical care. For a long time, they weren't even giving these officers health care at all. So luckily, there's been some changes to that. But it's one of those things that we act like is an unknown, but it's known. Russia targeted our best and brightest in our intelligence community, in our diplomatic community, in the military. Didn't matter if they're Republican or Democrat, if they were sharp, they were a rising star, they were working Russia, they went after them. And so it's kind of this thing that's been hanging. And as you can imagine, the victims feel completely ignored. They feel they haven't got treatment. There isn't even like a lot of government effort to think of new ways to treat them, or to try different things, or to bring in some of these smart scientific or medical communities to help make their lives a little better. So they do feel left alone. So it is this constant problem. And again, the government covered up a lot of stuff. So even if you say, I'm going to FOIA all of the information on Havana Syndrome and look at it myself, the records are not complete. So you're not even going to be able to make a good assessment, even if you pull in all the government records, because they have corrupted them. It's a sad thing to say, but it's true.
And P.S., the government has corrupted the files.
Yes.
What we're talking about is like some sort of pulse from a weapon that we didn't understand what that weapon was. There was a lot of controversy around, do you need a massive truck in order to create this microwavable pulse? Is it small enough to be portable? How are they deploying it, right? There was a lot of uncertainty about the technological side of how this was happening to people.
It's like on Star Trek. There's some weird gun and it goes pew, 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 pew. Like, that's what I picture.
Because it's this new type of technology that we weren't really clear about, there was a lot of uncertainty about, how it was being deployed, how it could be impacting people. So their symptoms were also not understood because we didn't understand the technology that was doing it to them.
Yeah, I think some of that is they didn't want to know all the details. To be very honest, let's just talk Havana. So the hotel they targeted these people in, it's not like everybody else in the hotel got targeted, right? There's flight attendants in this hotel, for example. So meaning it just can go on the other side of the wall of the room. So it doesn't have to be some truck outside. It's at least a size where it's in the room on the other side of the wall from you. That is a basic understanding. But yes, they like to act like we don't know what this is coming from. And then a lot of people don't take it serious. Now, when I left the CIA, I actually went to work for JetBlue, and I told them, I said, hey, your crew is staying in this hotel this Havana Syndrome happened in. I told them, I feel it's directed and it won't affect your crew, but why risk it? And so they banned the hotel. So there at least are people who understand this is a threat, and why put my people in place of this threat. But the US government just keeps throwing the people back into these threat environments and not solving it. And so I know a ton of people who quit CIA because they don't want to take the risk.
Oh, sorry, you went to work for JetBlue? Were you a flight attendant?
Yeah.
Were you a pilot?
I wasn't a flight attendant. No, I was in their security department. I'd be a great flight attendant, though, because I'm super friendly.
I mean, I'd like you flying the plane. I feel like I want you
Oh, no.
seeing
Oh, no.
everything. No.
I've flown at Dave and Buster's, and I've only ever crashed a plane. You do not want me flying the plane.
David Buster's.
Do you have any reactions to this woman who was a reporter who says that she was targeted? Like, are people being targeted on U.S. soil? Should we be concerned that this is just like become commercialized or is portable now and can attack or, potentially people who are saying things that someone might not want them to say could be attacked?
Yeah, so here's what I know. Yes, there has been targeting on US soil for sure in Washington, D.C. My opinion is this is portable. So we can kind of just take that off the table. You can be targeted anywhere. Now, I did have a friend hit by this last summer. Okay. So he was in Vienna, one of the places we know it is. And I think they were targeting the person with him. So they do make mistakes. And so I think he got hit instead of that person. So that's another thing, too, who is obviously in this person's vicinity. Now, here's the part it's difficult in this case. So remember, this was Russian. Well, over the years, it's proliferated. But China has it now, and then who knows who has it from that? So the negative too is now you can say, I believe I was hit by Havana Syndrome. Who is the threat actor? And that is harder to identify because it's not just Russia anymore with this weapon. And because we didn't spend time digging into it and looking at it, I don't think our government knows who all now has the weapon. And that's concerning. And then, of course, we likely also have the weapon because they say we bought one off the black market. So we also probably have a weapon. So again, it's a very frustrating thing to say, hey, I don't know this reporter's story, sorry, but who could have been a threat actor if it really is Havana Syndrome? And that is more complicated. You can't just assume it's the Russians anymore.
Not to think like a geneticist, but it's also possible that there's no particular weapon. There could be some other delivery system. This could be a signaling molecule that gets turned on, meaning it could be something that is somehow ingested, inhaled, placed somehow so that it is in your system and there's some signaling that gets turned on that activates this cascade.
There can be multiple things. Remember, we all kind of base it off the old Moscow U.S. Embassy model.
I'm trying to be creative. I'm trying to get a job with you.
But there could be 5 more different things that affect your nervous system because no one took time to look into it. They don't even know all the other ones. Like you're saying, that could be perfectly plausible. And that's what's the problem with covering it up. You didn't put the work into it. So we don't know those answers.
I will have my report on your desk tomorrow morning.
Looking forward to it.
What should we be afraid of that we haven't covered yet?
Oh, gosh. I don't think we should be afraid at all.
Aware of.
Okay. I think more like it's always important to know what could happen near me and then you prepare for it. So I live in Florida. So, of course, preparing for hurricanes is really important. And then we know there's been terrorist casing because the ISIS terrorists did it. So it's all those little things you start thinking of and doing like, hey, how can I better prepare myself? If I can't get hold of my family in a crisis, what's our plan? Just all those little steps. What I worry is people don't take the time to even just prepare within their own family, or maybe like they make the plan is all based on the husband and now he's at work and everyone's like, what do we do now? Dad had this role. And I think it's just a little more, what if this happens? What if we're at the movie theater and guns, we hear gunshot, what are we going to do? Like if you have all these discussions beforehand, first off, you're not afraid when it happens because you have a plan, you've thought through it, and then you can just go on and enjoy things. And when something's off, then you can get the heck out of Dodge because that's what you want to do. You don't want to stay in a situation that feels uncomfortable. Think about it. If you walked into a bar and it's all these bikers. Now, I might be curious because I'd like to ask some questions, even though I know that they're not going to answer anything, but I'm likely leaving, even though I'm super, super curious and I love being curious. I'm gone. Like, I do not fit in here. They all side-eyed me. They don't know who I am now. They're like, who's this crazy reporter probably? So that's how you have to live your life. Just take yourself out of a situation when you're in it, but, live your daily life how it is. Now, if I am in a location, like if I belong to a church or something, and I notice they're maybe not doing something, I'm going to say, hey, you should do it this way, or have you thought of this, or have you considered that? A really great example is in a lot of these casing incidents, the same question has come up. Do you live stream? So I've been going to churches and saying, hey, if you live stream, just delay it 30 minutes. if a terrorist wants this to be on the live stream and you're not a church who live streams, you might be taken off a target deck. Very simple. So the more knowledgeable we are, the better we can protect ourselves and the less we have to worry.
Really well said. That's a really interesting point also.
Do you feel less scared?
You know what? I have a lot of things I think about, and I have no one to talk to them about. So I'm really glad Sarah is here. And another thing I was thinking is TikTok a Psyops system designed by China to control the youth and their opinions? Like, how concerned should we be that most kids are spending 8 hours a day on a platform that China turns off at night and in their country is designed with educational and motivational content on it?
Real TikTok has long been banned in China. Now, the dangerous piece is no matter what platform you use, is the algorithm. Because if you start getting down one of these paths, let's say I'm getting down into accelerationist movement, right? What we just saw in San Diego. Now, when I start looking all that up, which I have been recently, it's now in my feed. I'm now getting more of it. It's like it's almost indoctrinating me, the algorithm, when they didn't even plan for it. Like it's on X or it's on Instagram. So even though China set up this model in some way, they don't have exactly the ownership now, but this is happening everywhere. Like I do find in a way algorithms are dangerous, even if you're not looking at bad stuff. So let's say you only have one point of view and then your algorithm's only giving you that. So it's only reinforcing it and you never think of the other side of things or look at the other side. Like I was a Democrat for 20 years and then I've been a Republican, I don't know, for a handful of years. I've worked all across the government. I've worked in the Hill. I've seen both sides of it. So I'm really good at seeing this and this because I'm just moderate down the middle. But if you only have an algorithm that's feeding you far right, far left, terrorist propaganda, whatever the heck they're feeding to our kids, because there's some crazy stuff they believe, it's just reinforced over and over again. And when something's reinforced, it's like when someone tells you something 3 times, right? It's now in your head. And it's hard to reverse that.
And they start small, right? They'll give you a video that isn't so extreme and they reinforce that for a few weeks. And then after that, it goes a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. I don't think we'll ever see what I'm about to say, but I've been a long proponent of algorithmic transparency where you should be able to slide a bar and say, I want something down the middle. I want my viewpoint to be reinforced. I want the counterpoint. And you should be able to see visually a graph or a chart or a slider of some kind to say, actually, your algorithm is weighted towards this. Because also, our attention spans aren't that long. There's like a 6 or 7 piece of content formula there. They give you, for me, it's here's a workout exercise you didn't know you were doing wrong. Here's a supplement you need to take. Here's an art thing that you could build at home that you'll never build. I just saw a beautiful one for a concrete lamp that I'm asking my son to make. Then here's a product you need to buy. Then here's another workout thing.
But this time it's a lady and she barely has any clothes on.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'm like, oh, I need to buy that thing. Oh, wait a second. I should really. And then they keep you in this loop. And then here's 2 pets that shouldn't be friends that are friends. And now I feel great. And I send that to Mayim. And it just keeps me in this loop over and over again. And I don't realize that there is a formula in place to keep me distracted. And if that is about ideology, if it's about what I should believe in, that I don't like my country, all of a sudden it becomes really dangerous.
Yeah, and it's a complicated thing because these companies are trying to make money. Yes, some are paid to do influence, which is very concerning, and it's hard to figure out what and where and when. But they also want to make money. So they want the outrage, they want the crazy. And it's a frustrating thing because they're never going to be fully transparent because some are involved in influence operations and those type of things. I really think one of the main things is detaching from it as much as possible. Last week I had a friend in town who is not on social media, and we drilled her, this poor girl, like she was an alien. But it was fascinating because she saw the world actually very clear. She was just as informed as crazy people on the internet, but didn't know the crazy. So we actually told her some of the conspiracies and she was laughing about it. But it's like, yeah, that's what you got to do. You got to detach from this because no one's going to fix your algorithm. No one's going to give you good info. They want to influence you. And we just have to be honest about that.
The biggest fear that so many of us have is, even if you're not a parent, you know, we have a generation that we did a horrible experiment on. We said, what
Hmm.
happens if we give you 24/7 access to rage, to dysmorphia, to mental health, pitfalls, right? What happens? This is what happens. We don't know how to have nuance. We have kids who don't know the difference between truth and fiction. If you see someone that says a study showed, unless you're showing me the raw data of that study and I can then duplicate that in other peer-reviewed study, I don't really care about one study that is reported on the internet. The study could have been 3 people. It could have been
Hmm.
3,000 people. And all that people want to do is forward that on. Here's a piece of information that reinforces the way that I believe, and now I'm going to send it to everyone I know, right? That's actually not what we want this next generation of kids thinking about and thinking towards.
Yeah, and it's a super complicated thing because also then when you say we're going to fix this problem, right? We're going to fight something like disinformation, then you bring in political views, assumptions, people's biases, and you can't solve it that way either. So it's almost like detachment is the key, which I know is complicated because these kids are becoming like this is an addiction. And as you know, I mean, you're smarter than me. Breaking someone from any addiction is so complicated. Um, it's so tough for parents right now. This is an uphill battle, but they got to fight it. And I feel sometimes people fight it, and then they give up. Like, it's not worth it. And I don't think that's the way it should be handled.
What do you do for fun? How does this not consume your entire identity? What did they do to you in the Midwest that made you able to function as a person, knowing the things that you know?
I guess I don't view it in a fearful way because remember, in life, there's just bad things all over. Like, it's more likely I'm gonna get hit by a car and die than I'm gonna get shot by a terrorist, right? So I guess I don't really worry about the fear of it. So I don't sit around like stressed about it or upset about it. I try to share. I really like to focus on preparing people because the more you know, the more you're squared away when something happens, or even if you just hear a boom. If I hear a boom, I'm getting the hell out of there. Like, you're not going to be some curious person, like, what could that be over there, right? But it's just getting people thinking different. So I like to focus on that a lot. But I have a normal everyday life. Unfortunately, I lost my dog, but my dog was pretty much who I spent all my time with, but he died of old age. But I ride around on e-bikes. I'm at the local farmers market on the weekends. Like, my life is perfectly normal, and that's the way all Americans should live. Like, you can't live based on a fear, but knowing the threats out there are at least good to know because then you can prepare around them. So if something bad happens, I'll be fine in my house for 1 week or 2 weeks, right? I can lock down. I'm ready. I know how to defend myself and protect myself if I need to. And I just think that's a really good place to be in. And then you can enjoy the rest of your life.
Well, Sarah, I found you on the internet, and I'm very glad
So
that we got to
glad.
speak with you.
Was I in the hot woman category or was I in the pet, the
You
two
tell
pets that
us.
don't get along?
You tell us.
I get a lot of here's the threats in the world also. So you came in that category.
Just was making sure what bucket it was in the
Oh my
algorithm.
God, I love her. Sarah, your podcast, The Watch Floor. If you like the way Sarah talks, which I do, and you like the perspective that she brings, please check out The Watch Floor. Where can people follow you and find you on the internet?
Yeah, so of course the watch floor is on YouTube, and then we have like it's on every other, you can go to Facebook, X, and then I'm just on Twitter mostly in my name, Sarah Adams, and then I'm on other sites like LinkedIn and stuff. But to be honest, I never get time to check my messages. So you better put some work in to hunt me down. Um, Otherwise, we're never going to connect. And I try really, really hard, but I do spend my nights in my free time going after terrorists, and I don't have a lot of spare time. Plus, I have a full-time job now, obviously, like you with this podcast, and so I'm learning. I like to be behind the scenes, so it's a super uncomfortable world for me as it is, and I bet well, you are a star, so I guess it's different, but it is a hard transition.
It is. No, it's very challenging. Also wanted to give another shout out to the book that you co-wrote with Dave Benton, Benghazi, Know Thy Enemy, a cold case investigation. A really, really cool book. Also because it shows you not only what happened, but how one investigates and how one pursues this kind of terrorism. So really appreciate the book, appreciate you being here, and thank you for your service. Thank you for everything you've done to keep us safe in ways that many of us will never know. And I know there are so many like you, many of whom we will never get to know. So thank you for your service and for risking your life to protect our freedoms. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thanks so much for having me today.
I will never sleep again. Was that the goal? You brought Sarah here so that I will just be awake all the time? I can get so much work done?
One of the important things that I took away from this conversation was the notion of things may get shut down. There may be situations that come up, whether natural disasters or otherwise, where it's not crazy to think that we have to lock down in our houses for a week or 2 weeks.
That's the message you took home.
Yes, because I think there's a preparation that we are naive
no.
to. And anytime I talk about, hey, we need to prepare a little bit, you're like, you're a doomsdayer and you want to build a bunker. And I think there's a fine line between I want to go in underground for months at a time and be able to live off the grid, and understanding that the construction of our society is actually much more fragile than we've been led to believe. And we're so used to next day delivery, now same day delivery. I go on the internet, I get all my food from Uber Eats or DoorDash or wherever you get it, not an ad for any particular company. Or I'm so used to just like going wherever I want to go at any time. The restrictions and frictions in our lives are lower than ever before. But like, that's not realistic as a sustainable model. There are bad actors, whether that be external or internal. There are natural disasters. There are earthquakes that happen in California. And I don't think most people don't have cash anymore. Most people don't have gas in their car. Most people don't have a prep or a meal prep or bottled water anywhere. And I think it's a little bit delusional, myself included, to think that we will never experience a situation where we need to be prepared.
I think that Sarah could have a very lucrative side business of selling emergency kits to people, so that after she tells you all the things that you should be afraid of, you would just go to her website and click and say, I'm a level 5 warrior.
What's my level 5 kit?
I need a level 5 kit.
There are actually a lot of, my Instagram doesn't show me those, but it could after this conversation because it's probably listening to me. There are companies that have pre-prepared go bags with like meal kits.
You wouldn't like the meals. You'd be kvetching about the meals all day.
Look, they're like camping meals. They're like add hot water. You need your boiled water kit to go with you.
The number one thing I'd be worried about.
Maybe for my birthday, we can get one of those.
The number one thing I would worry about, and I'm looking to Valerie and Eitan, if God forbid there was something and we had to be in here, the number one thing I'd worry about is listening to you complain about the food. That's the number.
Not your health.
Not my health.
Not the Havana
health
Syndrome.
Of the country.
No.
I wouldn't be worried about getting hit with Havana Syndrome. I'd be worried about you talking about microplastics and the things.
A lot of microplastics in those meals because you're pouring hot water into a bag. So that is a concern. But you know what? It's 2 weeks. It's not your whole life.
No, I really did really appreciated. I mean, look, she's got a candor that I don't have. As I said, I thought that was a funny part of this episode. These are the qualities that are required. Those are not my qualities.
And that's okay.
That's okay.
Everyone is different. I think we're probably
because I'm good enough and I'm smart enough. and gosh darn it, people like me.
Like you too. I think we're probably the funniest show that she's been on. She's on a lot of very serious shows.
She's very funny.
She is very funny. I haven't seen that funny side of her in the past. No shade to some of the shows she's been on, but they're very, very serious. A lot of mood lighting.
I mean, I had to question her use of the word funny.
Yeah, it wasn't funny.
I didn't mean to correct her, but like colloquially, I get it. Like, oh, and it was funny, but like nothing about. I'm just picturing, when even on the inside flap of her book, you see her and it's like, oh, here she is in front of, I don't know if it's the embassy, and she's just like happy, and she's very comfortable, with living in a completely different culture and placing herself in a totally different world to gather information. She's needs her own TV show.
In some ways, not always. Some ways you're very discerning, and in other ways you're quite gullible. So I just imagine like the film version of
I'm
you.
impressionable.
Okay, which I love about you. But I imagine the film version of you as a spy, but it's like kind of a farcical comedy where they're kind of hapless, a little bit.
No.
Skipping around.
No.
You kind of like, you go meet the person. They're not exactly on the corner where they say they're going to be. You get really upset. And then you go over to them and they're like, that person isn't important. You're like, oh yeah, of course not.
I'm thinking of Melanie Griffith in a film called Stranger Among Us. Shout out to Howard V. Rosenman, who produced that. And it was Melanie Griffith with a gun, like, freeze. It was fantastic. And I was like, that's what I could be that. I would play Sarah if she were to ask me. I would play her in the movie version of her life.
If you're still here at this point in the episode and you want more of Mayim Bialik's breakdown, you can get this type of banter and analysis over on Substack, Mayim Bialik's Breakdown on Substack.
From our breakdown to the one we hope we never have. We'll see you next time.
It's Mayim Bialik's Breakdown. She's gonna break it down for you. She's got a neuroscience PhD or two. One fiction, and now she's gonna break down